Hey everyone, this looks familiar because it is. We did a tune-up on this machine on the 5th of September. I think that was one evening I was working on. I don't remember, but excuse me. The owner had been using it for about 2 to 3 weeks. It's pretty much it's like the second to last day of September, so a couple weeks now. And then he stopped because all of a sudden everything, he noticed that there was just a whole lot of oil happening everywhere, and it's all on this side. Now on this side we do have a couple suspect areas. We do have the oil dipstick area. We also have some valves going on over here, but that's on the front, so that's a little hard. So I'm not 100% sure where it's coming from, so I figure let's take a look and see where it's coming from. That's weird. What's this white stuff in there? That's very peculiar. Oh, let's at least smell it. It smells like oil. What's... I can put you down and grab a rag. I was not expecting to see that. When I took all the oil out, there was nothing like that in there. I don't know what that is. It's definitely low, so we don't have a potentially a carb problem like leaking and just causing a problem there. I just don't know where it could be coming from. Now I looked on the bottom and there's really no wet spots, because I also did a clutch belt replacement, I believe, on this, and a tune-up. And the seal seemed fine. If there was a problem with the seal, I would suspect we would have a lot more. Just evidence of that. Why is it only coming over here, you know? But there's just a lot down there. Trying to see if something's cracked or what is happening here, you know. But it definitely does appear to be all in this general area. I should take off the muffler. Maybe I'll just take off the muffler. We'll take a look at behind there. Unfortunately, taking the muffler off only told me that it was above the muffler. At least it kind of appears like it's above the muffler. So I'm taking off the top cover, which requires to take off a whole bunch of stuff, including the cup. Why, I don't know, but it does. Okay, set that off to the side a little bit. Let's see here. That gave me a little bit more better of a viewpoint, but not much. So what I'm thinking is happening is that gasket is not sealing very well. Now the unfortunate part about that gasket not sealing well is I do not have another one of these gaskets, and the owner of this pretty much told me it's a emergency that he gets this back. I made a phone call to about 3 local areas that I don't really go to very often because I don't really like them. But more importantly, even though I asked them if they had the gasket in stock, they said, yeah, after we order it. Every single one of them. I did find one, but the person, it was a recommendation from one of the shops, and they told me to call these people. And the unfortunate part about these people is that they are located about 2.5 hours away from me. Unfortunately, that is just not going to happen. I mean, it's just not. So I think what we're going to do is, wow, what a horrible design. How? Okay. I'm going to take the screw, put it in, take a pry bar, and pop the flywheel. You should not see this. So what I did, and while I don't consider this sketchy, some people might, I put this bolt as pretty far down. I mean, it had like a good, I mean, how many threads is this? A lot. 10, 15. Bolt's not damaged, that's not, top's not damaged. Took a pry bar, put a decent amount of pressure over here. This is a pretty stout little area. And I took a, oh, what is this? A 1.8 or a 4-pound hammer, excuse me, 1.8 kilograms, or a 4-pound hammer. And I then proceeded to hit the top of it, not hard, but fast. That's the key part. You don't really want to beat it. You just want to kind of shock it. Now, the legit way is to get a puller, go on each end of the flywheel, put the arms around there, preferably a 3-jaw puller, and then I want to see what's underneath here. I'm not really sure, to be honest. And then you add pressure with the bolt in. Maybe not. You may not need the bolt, but it probably would make it easier. And you might damage the threads if you don't. But then you add pressure slowly, and then with the pressure, you will eventually just pop right off. I do want to save this key, though. That could potentially cause problems. Now, something I am noticing is there's no seal problem there, so that's good. We may or may not even have to take this off. I don't really know. There's a gasket, though. Do we risk breaking this gasket to see what's underneath there, or do we just go for it? Okay. Is that a crank vent? Could be a crank vent. Well, either way, whatever, I'm pretty sure it probably is. If I'm not, then correct me in the comments. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but it looks as if it's a crank vent. Which is odd, though. Where does it vent? unless that goes on the outside of the engine. Good possibility. I mean, that would explain all this oil. Is there a crank vent on the... No. It's not a crank vent. I don't even know what that is. I mean, it could be a crank vent for all I know, but there's also another crank vent on the front by the carburetor where they usually are. Anyway, we don't need to take this off, so we're not going to. We're going to put this back just as we found it. So, anyway, back to the not driving 2 hours. Actually, it might even be more than that now. I'm really thinking about it. I haven't driven there in years. That's one way, by the way. Okay, back to the point. So Hondas will have RTV or Honda Bond sealing up their crankcases, and when kind of looking at this one, it kind of looks like there is a gasket, but in times of need, RTV can be used. That's just how they work. So we might just be doing that. I called and asked the owner, and he asked me, well, will it run? I'm like, I think so. I mean, it will run. And I'm pretty sure that's where the oil is coming from. Everywhere else is dry. And like, but it's gonna take a while to get it. I asked him if he wanted to drive. And he said no. I blew it off and took off all the 10 millimeters that were there. So I'm going to be putting RTV, or I might have Honda Bond. I call it Honda Bond. That's what the Honda place called it. While that bracket's not necessarily holding it on, it's not making it easier. This is never easy. I'm just making sure I'm not like missing something here. Oh, I think I am missing one right there. Okay. Let's remember, I think that is much longer than the other ones that came with it. Yes, it is. Okay, so that's where the long one goes. We have to remember that one. So you are on a tripod, because I don't have a camera person. So the chances of me wiggling this off without you falling at the same time is pretty minimal. So I'm gonna go ahead and do just the wiggling so you don't die. The mysterious white goo is still perplexing me. I don't really see a lot, but I got the top off, and as you can tell, there's not a whole lot of oil in there, so we will be remedying that before we continue. But you know, we see everything, so on and so forth. Someone took the liberty of writing 3/4 and 62, whatever that means. But this is our problem area, and I don't believe I did this because the gasket is very stiff. I think this has been like this for a long time, and it just recently became a problem. So I'm going to try to probably flatten that out as much as possible. It is ripped, as you can tell. It's pretty much hanging on by a thread. That's probably why it started leaking. I'm going to try to clean the oil as much as I can. I'm going to put some RTV in questionable areas, and I might put a thin layer on everything just in case. I'm questioning if I should leave the gasket. I feel like I should because it actually came off pretty good places, and where I wasn't sure was a crank vent. I do believe is, because I believe that was where we were looking before. It kind of went into this little cavity, then it went into here. Then if you look, there's a passageway, and then that passageway connects to the crank vent. So that's what that was right here. And you saw the imprint. Anyway, so I'm going to get working on that. I'm going to clean it up with a towel, maybe a little carb cleaner. Carb cleaner is a little hard on gaskets, so maybe not that, but definitely a towel. I might spray the towel with carb cleaner and clean the surface. I'm going to put a thin layer on everything, and then we will put it back together. So I put some on the affected areas. Unfortunately, that gasket was just not conforming. It was just stiff as a rock, not going to be working. So I had to take it off. So I put a little extra on the corners. I'm going to put a little more here, but almost as important is I wiped down this entire top end where the mating surface would be. And you also want to make sure these pins are still there, because I think you can take these out. These are pretty much stuck in there, but if they do come out, make sure you have them. But cleaned it very good. It's very clean. You want to have no oil on there, otherwise that could make another leak. When you do this, you need to follow the instructions on the container that you're using. The one I'm using says wait about 15 minutes before you basically use it to let it kind of cure, get like a small little skin going on there, and you use that. It's been about 15 minutes, maybe like 12 or 14 or something like that, but we're getting a skin. So let's put this bad boy back on. Yeah, like this. This can sometimes be a little tricky because there is a cam and a governor sometimes in the way, usually in the way. Almost always in the way. I think a little bit of assertion might be needed here. Not that way though. I think this air box is giving us problems. Let's at least loosen it. Let's see if that helps. The governor little arm was not happy with us a little bit there. Now what's going on here? Do we just need a little bit more tappita? There we go. So I'm gonna let that be for a little bit, and then while it kind of sets up and cures a little bit more before I really put a lot of pressure on it, because it's on there but it's not fastened. I'm gonna let it cure for about another 10 or 15 minutes, kind of build a good bond, and then I'll run the 10mm bolts down, and then we'll put the flywheel back on. We'll let it sit for a little bit as well, and then we might we'll put oil on everything. We'll get it all ready, but we don't want to like run it immediately after. So understandably, there might be one or two people out there that may or may not agree with doing said things. But you know, this is a process that is done on multiple machines, so I don't really find it to be too horrible. Now, that's just my personal opinion. I don't know what yours is, but you know, Hondas, they all use this, and in my opinion, it's actually more of a benefit, because let's think about this. I've probably done this a handful of times. Usually they are on Briggs and Stratton. This is the first of this type with Kawasaki I've ever had to do, so it's kind of odd, but I've never had to do one of these repairs on a Honda, not a single one, and I like that. Paper gaskets are great, don't get me wrong. Like, there are times when I wish I would always see a paper gasket, and there's times where I wish I would never see a paper gasket. This is that never time. There's probably a torque spec, but we're just going to sink it down a little bit. And that's just because this silicone, at least the one I'm using, specially made for this purpose. Like, that's why they make it. Just snug them up. These don't have to be super tight. Do it again. Now, like I said, that's a difference of opinion, but stuff like this happens all the time, especially when you're putting it back together. So to avoid that, I personally do like to use this method, just because it avoids a whole lot of potential problems in the future. So I just want to say that before I continue, that yes, the paper gasket, man, I can't see with you, like you're literally looking at where I need to be. The paper gasket is definitely the legit way and the way it should be done. I'm not going to argue that fact at all, but having to do this multiple times on different styles of engines and then coming to a conclusion that I never have to do this on certain engines has really got to me to believe that these repairs, while I will usually try to do the legit way, this way is also just as effective. But yet again, that's my opinion. And when you have a person who says they need it immediately and you inform them, this is the important part, that this is what is going to be happening, do you agree? And they give you their blessing or whatever, then I think it's okay. Torque spec for that is how far the impact can go. We are moving freely, so I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of this together. So go ahead. I'm going to, more or less is exactly the same. I'm going to clean this up though, so I can see when we turn it on if it is leaking any more oil. I'm also going to put more oil on there to make sure we don't run it without any oil, because it was pretty low, and then we will go from there. But I'm probably going to wait. Ideally, I will be waiting until tomorrow I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that because the person wants it here very quickly. I'm going to try to convince them to let me have it for another day, just so I can do this properly. Well, as proper as one can be when doing said things. Oh, that was the bolt I need to find. But I'm going to go ahead and do that, so I'm going to be right back. So it has been roughly an hour since I finished everything, and like I said, you should be doing this a lot longer. I just want to see if everything is running good, because we did have the top off, the governor was out. I want to make sure everything is going well. So without the plug connected first though, well, technically I could do it here. I forgot this has a clutch. So the plug is disconnected. Let's just give it a pull. Everything sounds good, so I think we're okay to proceed. Let's go ahead and... Oh, never mind, the plug was on. Well, good thing we didn't pull very hard now, isn't it? Let's give it a pull and see what happens. I did fill it with oil, by the way. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. We'll let it sit. I think judging on what I saw here, there's really no doubt in my mind that was the problem. So it's raining right now. I'm going to let it sit in here for a little bit, or in a dry spot, but right now I'm going to let it set up. The person told me it's okay. He doesn't need it tonight anyway. He'll come early tomorrow morning. Unfortunately, tomorrow morning I will be working, but I will have a break. So I'll order lunch. So I'm going to try to convince him to come at those times. Well, I will convince him because I'm not going to be here. So, yeah. Other than that, I think we're about it. So I'll go ahead and get this wrapped up. But if you're experiencing a random leak, this one has an oil filter. Check the oil filter. Check the oil dipstick tube. Sometimes they don't have a tube. Sometimes just the gasket on it could be bad. You know, whatever your application is, check that. Check the seal on the bottom, because sometimes it can be flung around and go everywhere. Generally though, you don't notice those, except for the oil like in your driveway or something if you start it there, which you probably should be. If all those are good, you might have something like this going on. And we were lucky in the fact that we didn't have to remove the engine. A lot of these you do, because every single time, with the exception of this one so far, you have to take the engine off, which is a whole lot more difficult. It takes a lot more time. I think we did this in about half an hour of actual work time. It's more like 2 hours of sitting time included, so keep that in mind. Okay, well, if you like what you see, keep watching, subscribe, catch me in my next video. Have a good night. So it is the next day. On my lunch break, I have about 15 more minutes before I have to get back to work. But I let this run for about 20 to 25 minutes on, well, the beginning I think was idle just because I wanted to look at it real quick to make sure everything was okay. But then maybe like 2 minutes into it, I turned it full throttle. I took a clamp, put the blade on, let it have a little bit of a load. I mean, granted, I didn't mow my yard or anything with it, but it was at least something. And I walked in here, turned you on. So far, I see absolutely nothing. So I do believe it is done. I already closed out the video and everything, but I wanted to show the result of it because, while yes, I did start it up, I wanted to at least show the rest of it because it is important. I really want to hammer home the importance of letting that bond seal for at least, or cure for at least a day before you start using it. And coincidentally, the guy that needed it immediately told me he's not going to be able to come until about another 3 days from now. So it's amazing how emergencies happen, but that's a different story for a different day. I'm going to leave it at this one now. Have a good night. See you later.